Welcome to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and we get together here on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We have been doing this for 8 years. We've been meeting all kinds of Orthodox people. And I think it's really so lovely because, as I like to say, we are one Orthodox church, but we're split up in the United States here into jurisdictions. We all live in different regions of a very large space, right? So there could be someone right down the street who's Orthodox, but you go to different parishes and different jurisdictions, you worship in different languages, and you just don't know each other. Right. But I find that, when I travel around, I go to coffee hour, I sit down and I just strike up a conversation with someone. This church is full of fascinating people. And so I've been very happy to have an opportunity to get to know so many people and to introduce them to you and bring us all together, right? To bring us together as a community in the church, I think is a wonderful project. And so this has been a lot of fun. Of course, next week will be our farewell episode after 8 long years. It's a lot of people. But tonight we have one more interview. Tonight we are interviewing Martha Condra, and I'm so excited that Martha would be the last one because when Ancient Faith Radio first started, I was newly Orthodox. I was a convert. I was kind of trying to find my way. And, back then, there was nothing in English, right? If you couldn't speak Greek or Russian, you were kind of out of luck. It was really hard to find anything, especially anything written like by lay people, for lay people in English, just about the Orthodox lifestyle, right? Like you could read a sermon by St. John Chrysostom, but you couldn't read, hey, I've got 5 kids and I can't figure out what to make for dinner and I'm fasting and I'm frustrated. And it was just a lot of little things, right? And of course, in our communities, we don't necessarily have a whole lot of Orthodox people right in our neighborhoods. And most of my friends at church were all half an hour, 45 minutes away. So a friend of mine told me about Ancient Faith Radio. And I started listening. And there was a podcast by Martha Condra. It was called, was it Wheat, Wine, and Oil? It was Wheat, Wine, and Oil, right? And so Martha is a chef. She's an Orthodox cook. She's, educated. And she did this great podcast about fasting and not just like, oh, these are recipes, but really kind of a philosophical way of approaching food, approaching fasting, approaching how to think about it. And I found it so helpful when I was coming along. And it's just so nice to honor those early days of ancient faith and think about, we have come a really long way in the sense that we have a ton of Orthodox media now. We have all kinds of choices, lots of books. For those of you who just got here and you're just thinking Orthodoxy is like really well established with media, that is new. This is new. This is, less than 20 years, but it's been a wonderful 20 years. And I'm so happy to finish up this show with Martha. So Martha she's a mother and a grandmother. She's in Birmingham, Alabama. And as I said, she had a podcast and she was actually a culinary apprentice at the Opryland Hotel, which I think is actually pretty neat. I would like to hear a little bit about that. But she's worked in the test kitchens of like Cooking Light and places like, so she's done a lot of professional recipe development, but also has done, of course, the podcast and different things sort of in the Orthodox world as well. So she's also featured pretty often on, is it the Filled with Less podcast that Cynthia's doing, that you've been doing?
I have been a guest of Cynthia and Molly's, I think, a couple of years ago. And then most recently, the program that they did called Back to Basics, I think it was 2 years ago. They actually reached out to me, and Olympia Rusu, who started that program, contacted me, and so the 4 of us actually worked a little bit on that, and so I did
that's neat.
A bit of work for them, and that was just so wonderful. I had such a good time, and they were so they were so lovely to include me. And
you're a valuable voice in it, really, because it is such a, our food and, especially if you're the one who cooks in your house or whatever. All of these things, it can get all out of balance and difficult, right? And we need someone to sort of talk about really like the spiritual aspects of food, the health aspects, the wellness, the whole thing, right? It's very holistic, I think, with the Filled with Less and Back to Basics program. And I think you're really a good voice for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. It was a blessing to me. Olympia is a holistic nutritionist. I believe I have that correct. And so she offered a very unique approach to all of that. And I did kind of more recipe-based things and some videos with instructions. And I thought it was a really great combination of just the talents that she put together, and then Cynthia's and Molly's contributions were so valuable. And I thought it was just a really nice, well-rounded program. And I was very humbled to be a part of it. It was a lot of fun. But that was probably
That's
the
neat.
most recent thing I've done. Yeah.
Well, they're lovely. I like their, and so everyone, if you want to look that up, Filled with Less, and they did a Back to Basics program, but that's Molly Savrin and Cynthia Damascos, and they just do all kinds of wonderful programs. They have a lot of people involved, and it's really, really beautiful and neat. But it's a wonderful way to support your spiritual life, right? To kind of help your whole life, I think, to keep everything calm and organized and simple so that you're not frustrated and running around in a circle. Mm-hmm. But we will now get on to tonight's program instead of talking about another one. But I just wanted to say I've just really enjoyed Martha's work, and so I'm excited for you to get to know her. So Martha, okay, so tell me, where did your story start? Did you start out in Birmingham always, or were you somewhere else?
Oh, no, I actually grew up in a very small town in Middle Tennessee. I was about an hour outside of Nashville. And I grew up there and went to school in Mississippi, where I met my husband the last semester of school. And we got married about a year, I guess, after we had met. And so we were, as far as orthodoxy is concerned, we both grew up as Protestants.
Right. That's so common, right, in our Orthodox universe. I mean, you and I are old timers now because we're like 30 years in, right, or 20 years in. But yes, absolutely.
I don't think my story is terribly unusual. We grew up in different Protestant groups, and then converted together in 1993.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. Mm-hmm. So as you're growing up in Tennessee, so Middle Tennessee near Nashville, was it like you said small town. How small? Was it really a small town?
Oh, very. I grew up on a farm, actually, and which I loved. I loved being outside. I used to help my dad with the garden. I rode horses. I really loved being outside a lot when I was younger. I learned to drive on a tractor. And I really loved it. I just loved being outside. And my town was very small, maybe like 14,000 people when I was growing up. So if we needed anything, we had to go to Nashville, go to the big city. And so in that respect, I was not much of a city girl at all. And I've been in Birmingham for just a little over 29 years now. And I came here specifically for a job with Cooking Light magazine in the test kitchen.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, I'm just realizing right now, you might know some of my cousins who are there. I'm going to have to ask you after the show. But so you're there in the country. Were you really in church a lot? Was it there in town and it was a close community in a small town? Is that how it was?
Yes, it was. And I grew up in a mainline Protestant church, the Disciples of Christ, the Christian church. I don't know if you are familiar with that. It's probably a lot more well known through Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, that area. I don't see very many of them in Alabama or Mississippi, but it was interesting. I grew up as a Christian. My parents were very, very committed to the church. And so, yes, and the interesting thing about it is we observed Advent. We had 4 weeks of it, so we were very active in preparing for Christmas. We had communion every Sunday. And that was always very important to me. And the fact that I had that foundation was very important to me, to be able to go and celebrate what I now call the Eucharist, but to have communion every week. That was something I grew up with, and it was very important. When I went to college, I was always good friends with people who were Catholics and people who were Episcopalian, and I was drawn to that type of worship. I'm a very visual person, and I was very drawn to that. My church instilled a lot of things in terms of service, working for others, being committed to helping others, and just it helped develop a heart like that, I would say. And so that was very important to me, but I think I was missing something. And so when I had the chance, when I was in college, I joined the Episcopal Church, and that was kind of closer, that was definitely visually different. And I had very good friends who were Catholic, and so I would go to Mass sometimes with them, and there were things that always appealed to me about the sacrament and the ritual type of worship that I could find there.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were receiving communion all the time as a kid in the Protestant church, was it a liturgy, or was it wasn't liturgical? Because some churches are, right, in the Protestant world. But
I would say no, and it was not, of course, not viewed the same way. It was more of a symbolic thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it was. Oh no, it was not.
Now, did the shift then to a liturgical church, did it feel very natural to you, or did you struggle with that a little bit?
No, I really didn't. And I had a friend who was a priest ask me several years ago what was easy for me and what was difficult about becoming Orthodox. And I told him, I said, the saints were pretty easy for me. And I had a situation very early on. I was 15 years old. I was very, very close to a cousin of mine. And the night before my 15th birthday, she was a year older. Her birthday was a month ahead of mine, but she was a year older. The night before my 15th birthday, we got a phone call that she had died very unexpectedly from a brain tumor, and she was scheduled to have a CAT scan or something the next day. And I had two older sisters, no brothers. I was the baby of the family. And she and I were very, very close. And that was devastating to me. I mean, as a teenager, I just can't, I almost don't have the words for it. But even though I couldn't have articulated it at the time, I felt drawn to praying for her after she died. And I didn't know that, but there was something that just seemed off about, okay, well, she's gone, and now what do you do? So that, I think, was a part of me from a very early age, and I didn't really know how to express that until I met friends who were Catholic, and they would tell me things, but then really until I saw how Orthodoxy views death and those who've passed away and prayers for the dead. And so I told my friend who was a priest, I said, that was easy for me. It just made sense to me that you would pray for people who were gone.
I fell right into that too. It was almost a relief. Like I hadn't realized I had a problem with it, but I remember, my mom had told me, oh, that means you don't trust God. They're saved. It's okay. And I just always thought, well, that's kind of strange to suddenly just, especially if it's a long illness or something, right? You've been praying for this person intensely, and then all of a sudden, that's it, no more. Otherwise, that would be a problem if I did. So it always sort of hit wrong, but it wasn't until, you're right, until you come in and someone says you can do it, that all of a sudden you think, oh, good, we should be able to do that. That makes sense.
To me, it just made sense. I mean, I think in my heart, when I was younger, I knew something was missing for her. I wanted more. After she was gone, I wanted to be able to do something. I'll tell you, that is one thing that I think Orthodoxy does so beautifully is I think it prepares people for death, but it also shows you how to grieve. It shows you how to remember people in terms of making the koliva for their anniversary. I mean, there's a real way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have found that, as an adult in a Protestant church. I just don't. And so I
Absolutely.
was talking to this priest friend. I said that was something that was so meaningful to me was how to really address those who have died. And also Mary, I was drawn to her, I think, through a lot of things, but particularly the fact that, okay, well, in the Protestant church, you talk about her a little bit at Christmas time, and that's it.
Right.
And you and I share this with our children, and how she's so present in those who are grieving as parents. You and I've talked a little bit about that, but
Yep.
that was easy for me. Now, not everything was easy. I'm not going to come out and say, oh yeah, it was just a piece of cake, and no. My husband actually was much more knowledgeable about the Orthodox Church than I was, and he had been reading. He had been studying a lot of things, and he was much more familiar with it than I was. And of course, I knew very, very little about it. I knew one very nice Greek girl in high school. She was a couple of years behind me. And, we weren't close friends because she was younger and I didn't know her that well. But she never mentioned being Orthodox. And, I just didn't really know anything about it until we started going to Vespers at a church that was close to us when we lived in Memphis. And so
in Memphis. You converted in Memphis. Were you at St. John's in Memphis?
We were at St. John's for a while. Yes.
That's a great parish. I love that.
It is a great parish.
That's fantastic.
Friends there, and I love the clergy there, and it's such a lovely place. We actually were kind of on the 5-year plan. So we actually started going to Vespers at St. John's. They were meeting at a building on the Memphis, well, I call it Memphis State, but I think it's something else now. And they were meeting very close to us. And so we started going to Vespers there. And then they bought a building, an existing building that had been maybe a Methodist church, I'm not sure. But then we were very interested in converting and in becoming Orthodox. And it just didn't happen right away because there was a major move, and my husband's job, kind of got us into Middle Tennessee. So by the time start to finish, it was roughly 5 years. So we actually came into the church in Franklin, Tennessee.
Oh, wow. No kidding. Mm-hmm. Okay. At Father Stephen Freeman's parish at Is it St. Elizabeth?
Well, no.
Okay.
I think he's retired now. Father
Stephen. Oh, he is. Yeah.
But Father Gordon Walker, who has been gone for a while, but he was the one who started that parish. I'm not exactly sure. I think he was definitely in on it, but that's where we came into the church. But one thing that was very, very important to us, my husband probably was much closer to converting and ready to convert before we actually did. But I was a little hesitant. And so one thing we just decided very early on is that we would go together. That was very important to us. We had 2 children at the time. We had 3, but as you know, our history, we lost our first child to SIDS. And we had 2 children who were just 3 and 5. And so I wanted us to come in as a family, and my husband did too. So that was how it happened, and probably he was a little more ready, but I just said, I'm not gonna try to hold you back. I'm not going to go to my church and you go to that church. We just didn't feel like that was going to be a good solution. So it took 5 years, but that's okay.
It takes a while. It does. Now, when you lost a child to SIDS, and I did as well, that's Martha saying, we've talked about that before, that we both lost a child a while back, maybe 20 years ago or so. Yeah. And as you were mentioning, with orthodoxy, it's so different when you're grieving in the Orthodox Church. Now, you weren't quite Orthodox yet, were you? So when you lost a child, you didn't have any of that. Were you in the Episcopal Church?
I was in the Episcopal Church, and I'll tell you, as great as my priest was, I was actually the secretary at the Episcopal Church, where we were when my husband was in law school, and that's where we were when we lost our son. And our priest was wonderful. Oh, he was just so great and so kind. But overall, I would say I struggled a lot because we were living away from our families. My husband's family was farther away. My family was about 5.5 hours away. We were very young. We were 25 years old. And there just was not a community in terms of what we needed, in terms of how to process it. And so, yes, in that sense, it was probably, I would say, more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was already Orthodox, but I wasn't I didn't think of Orthodoxy as all the things that it really is, right? I came in just sort of thinking I'd go to church on Sundays. And it's that experience grieving that made such a difference for me, because I looked around and thought, oh, this is something else. Like, there's something going on with these. They're not, dusty old rituals and old prayer books. Like, this is powerful, helpful, wonderful stuff. And it's, I'm grateful to have already been in the church. I'm sorry it took you a while to get there afterwards, because it's a tough thing. I mean, it's hard enough going through it in the church, honestly. This is a terrible tragedy.
And, I grew up as a Christian. I'm sure I had a lot of time where I didn't probably deepen my faith, but I never abandoned it. I always believed in God, but there were probably years where I was not really, I guess deepening it, my faith is probably the best way to put it. I felt very alone through all of that. And I will say probably that's one reason I cling to the Theotokos so much, is because who better in that we can think of to know what grief is, losing a child. And there are things that, yes, I would say there would definitely be things I could have done in Orthodoxy, I think, that would have been helpful. I do think there are ways.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's, we have the best possible ways to deal with it. There's no magic bullet that's going to make everything okay. And actually, I was just reading something where a woman was saying, well, I want to grieve because I'm supposed, this child deserves a parent to grieve. And it's like, well, that's true too, that it's just going to be a while, and that's where it is, and that's how it has to be. But do you feel like that experience changed you, of losing a child? In what ways do you feel? I think it changed. I think it changes everybody. I don't think it's possible not to. But how do you see it operating in your history?
Well, I will say this. Being so young, I try to think, what can I take from this experience? And my son taught me how to be a mother. He taught me how to love and put everyone else, my children, my husband, everyone first. And I don't have a problem with that. But, I didn't want it to define me. Mm-hmm. I feel like probably there have been times here and there where maybe it did, and I didn't want that. But, I don't know how you could live through that. And my husband and I will say a lot, as difficult as it's been when you have faith, and what do people do who don't have it? How do they survive? I have no idea. I don't know how they manage.
I don't know.
As difficult as it is. But yes, for sure, it taught me a lot of things. But just to be, and probably one of them is to just be so grateful that we have access to, that we're encouraged to go to God when we are hurting, and that at the church provides healing,
Absolutely.
Absolutely provides healing. Through confession and through unction, and they're just so many gifts, and like I said, it was it would have been a completely different recovery, not that you're recovered and you hit a point, because you're always going to be recovering, but no, it would have been completely different if I had been in the Orthodox Church.
It's a great consolation, and it helps you how you're going to think about it. It gives you a perspective that you can live with, but it's still very difficult. So you had your son, he passed, and then your husband was getting his law degree. Did you then have the other kids after he was a lawyer?
Yes. We moved for his first job out of law school, moved to Memphis, and had our next son there, and our next daughter there. And then we had two after we moved to Birmingham. And, that's something I maybe you had this too. I was just so grateful to be able to have another child. And I remember just saying to God, I don't want to be greedy. I don't want you to think I'm greedy. I just want one who's healthy. I know, right? And I'll just be happy with one who's healthy. And oh my goodness, I'm the most blessed person.
It does give you a different perspective after you've lost one. I know that, one of my kids, before I lost my son, had a cleft lip and palate. And then people would be pregnant, and the family would always say, well, as long as the baby's healthy, I don't care if it's a boy or a girl. I only care if it's healthy. And I would think, maybe it has a defect, but it's still good. It's still a good kid, it's funny. You get these different perspectives, and you start thinking, maybe it's greedy to say I want a healthy baby. And I want, things that nobody else blinks at that just sort of stick with you. And it seems like, careful what you say.
I will say this, grief when you don't have a framework, when you don't have the framework that I didn't have, the grief will distort your thinking so deeply. And I realize that, and I'm grateful that I'm in a place where there are so many things that are available. But that my thinking was really distorted for a long time, and I never stopped praying, but I
Right.
talked to God in a very different way.
Right.
I don't know if that was right, but I was just trying to survive, at that point. And I read everything I could get my hands on. This was way before the internet, and I remember reading something, and the title of it was "The Subsequent Child," and I thought, oh, that sounds so clinical. I don't like that. But I read everything I could. But we were greatly blessed, and our children are healthy, and the greatest thing I think probably is they are all in the church.
Thank God. That is the greatest thing. That's neat.
Yes.
That's really good. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back right here with Martha Condra. We'll be here in a minute.
Each year after Pascha, the Orthodox Church celebrates the holy myrrh bearers, who cared for Jesus' body after he was crucified. But myrrh bearing has a broader definition. It can serve as a metaphor for the practical, incarnate love to which Christ calls his followers. In The Art of Myrrh Bearing, author Elisa Bielatich Davis explores the lives of grace-filled, myrrh-bearing saints in Scripture and throughout the life of the Church, offering questions for reflection in each chapter. By following the lead of compassionate saints, such as Joseph of Arimathea and Olga of Alaska, we can learn to embrace a simple and profound way of life in ever-deepening communion with Christ and with others. You can find this book at store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. This is Elisa Bielatich Davis. We're live tonight. Mike and Simon, as usual, are in the Chesterton studios, making sure that you can see us and hear us on YouTube, on Ancient Faith Radio, on the app and the website, and of course on Facebook Live also. So if you ever miss a show, just go back and check the archives and it'll be there. But tonight's guest is Martha Condra. And Martha, we have been talking about you, and we have not gotten to anything about cooking. Which is funny because when I think of you, I think about cooking. So I'm curious, like when you were a kid, did you like cook with your grandma? Did you love to cook? Did you develop a love for that early or no?
I did, actually. I think, like I said earlier, I grew up on a farm. I helped my dad put the garden in. Well, my mom too. She was out there. And so a lot of times it was the three of us out there, and my sisters too. And I got really spoiled. I mean, growing up with, great vegetables, and that was just wonderful. My mom was a really good cook, but I don't think she just looked at it artistically, like maybe I did. But both of my grandmothers were excellent cooks. They were different from each other. My father's mother was more of a baker, and my mother's mother was more of a cook, I would say. And I spent time with both of them, but in particular, my maternal grandmother was one who would like let me come in the kitchen. I spent a lot of time with them, and I remember very vividly. I can tell you exactly what her kitchen looked like, and how she taught me to break an egg. And she would let me come in and do things. And I would go to my mother. We had an apple tree on the property. And I would go in and say, Mom, can I try something with these? And she would say, yeah, sure. And so I got to dabble a little bit at home. But I did have an interest in it early on. I had a friend in high school who liked to cook. And a couple of times she and I would get together at her house and kind of play around in the kitchen. Her mom didn't really have a problem with that. And so, yes, I would say I started having an interest in it early on. Yeah.
Now, when you went to school in Mississippi, what did you study? Were you studying culinary arts?
No, not at the time. I didn't really think seriously about, I didn't think seriously about going into cooking school until, after my husband and I were married. And I kind of was at the point I felt like I sort of needed to go back to school. I felt kind of a draw to do something like that. And I was pretty particular about what I wanted to do. I was interested. I had talked to a friend who was a guidance counselor at a high school where I was working. I was working in the library, and she said, there's an apprentice program in Nashville. And it was news to me. And so I looked into it, and cooking schools were, kind of out of range really financially. I mean, the one I was very interested in, and this was years ago, back in the early 90s, the one I was really interested in would have been roughly about $42,000 for a 2-year program. And I thought, there's no way that can happen.
Oh, that is a lot, even in the 90s. I mean, that's a lot of money.
I have no idea what it would be now, but
I mean, that's almost like going to Stanford. I think Stanford back then was 30,000 because I wanted to go. I did not go, but I remember that was like the going rate for private school tuition. So that's pretty high for cooking school as well.
Yes, and that was a 2-year program. I wound up finishing undergraduate school I have a degree in history, and then I have a minor in German and psychology. And all of those things I'm very interested in. But I graduated from school. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then I wound up getting married early and having children. And so all of those things kind of got pushed to my ideas about things got pushed to the back. But it just worked. Well, I did go to school when my children were a little bit older and they were in school. And it was, I really did look into this program in Nashville. It was a 3-year program, so it was longer, but it was an apprenticeship program, and I was a paid employee. I got health insurance. I got I got benefits. They got their money's worth because they worked apprentices pretty hard. But we went through all of the production kitchens, all of the restaurants. I started in the butcher shop. And it was a large hotel. It was the largest convention hotel outside of, where was it? I want to say outside of Las Vegas. Now that may have changed. I don't know as far as numbers really how big.
And that's Opryland?
I don't know. Opryland Hotel.
Yeah.
I don't even think they have the apprenticeship program there anymore. We were connected to Volunteer State Community College, so I have an applied science degree from Vol State. But I had academic classes in addition to working in production kitchens and restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's a neat program. What a great thing.
It was wonderful. I had nutrition program. I had culinary French program. I got to work with a Michelin chef in one of the restaurants. My pastry chef was French. The assistant pastry chef was Austrian. It was an international place, and nobody really would have maybe thought that. But I worked with so many great people, so many talented people, and I had a class in wine pairing, a class in hospitality. I had multiple classes in like hospitality management and food and beverage management, that kind of thing. So it was great, but I knew because, because of having children, I did not want to go into a restaurant. Restaurant work it's very demanding. It's very hard. And if you're a single person, you can maybe fare a little bit better. But if you are married with family, it's extremely demanding and difficult. And so I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to work for a food magazine. And I had a very good friend from my hometown who actually worked for Oxmoor House, which is the book division from Southern Living and Cooking Light. And so when I was getting ready to graduate, I think someone from her office actually called and talked. I think I answered the phone in the main kitchen actually, but there was a job open at Cooking Light in the test kitchen. And it just so happened that it turned out to be a really good time for us to move. My husband was working for the state of Tennessee, and there were some rumblings about his office being closed, and so it worked. I contacted Cooking Light and interviewed with them, and got hired in the test kitchen, and so we made the move to Birmingham, and that's how we actually decided to come to Birmingham.
Oh, that's amazing. I probably have cooked some of your recipes then, because I was a big Cooking Light fan back then. That was a great magazine. That was awesome.
I met so many talented people, photographers and art people, and designers and prop stylists, and art. It was just so great. And it was good because I worked on what was called flex time. And so I went in at 7 o'clock in the morning and I was through by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so my children were in school. I could go and, I was working while they were in school, and that worked out. So I didn't work weekends. It allowed me to, keep my focus where I wanted on my family too. And it was great. I after I left the test kitchens, I continued to work for them as a freelance recipe developer. And then I would go in occasionally if somebody was going on maternity leave or something. But at that point, I just kind of needed a little more flexibility. And so I worked as a recipe developer for them for years and loved that. I would really love to get into a little bit more of that. But the recession, the economy in 2008 really hit publications very hard. Most everything was going digital at that point, and they stopped hiring outside developers, really, because a lot of the magazines were having to rely on more in-house staff to do those things. So it was that was hard. That was a little bit hard to try to keep working for them as a freelancer. That was a little different.
Yeah.
I am I don't think I told you this, but I am probably most recently retired as a Latin teacher. I taught Latin in 2 of the Catholic schools here. And, I have this thing where I feel like I have to go back to school every so often. So I'm kind of getting a little antsy about doing that. But I did go back in early 2000s. I got drawn into teaching Latin at one of the Catholic schools here where my daughter was in school. And they were trying to really move toward a classical curriculum. And the sister came out one day and she said, "Can I talk to you? Could you possibly teach Latin?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." I don't know why I said that. Sure. I had studied in school, loved it. I love languages. I love studying languages. And so I did that for a few years, but I went back and got master teacher certification from the Circe Institute. And so that's why I did that. But that, I kept freelancing as long as I could. But when those contacts kind of dried up, it was good that I had, and my children were much older at that point. So I actually went through teaching Latin until.
Well, it's good. I mean, I don't think the magazine industry really never picked back up, right? I mean, it just like slowly kind of fell apart.
Everything is online, really.
Yeah.
And I still have friends who work in the industry, but it's very, very different. And it was such a great job. I mean, I would start development again if I could find that right setup. But I did food photography. I did development. I handled reader concerns or questions. I did that. I mean, it was everything. But I had just such great people to work with. I learned a lot about really the kind of backside of it with photography and art. And I will say it was great. We did not make weird food. Everything we photographed was real.
Do people sometimes make fake food because it'll look better in the picture? Like it doesn't really taste good, but it's going to look good.
Weird things that you can do. But
Funny.
we did not do that. I will say that. And I was, the magazine was very like, we are not going to do that. We might have 6 of this, but we're going to shoot the prettiest one, but we're not making weird things that aren't edible, to put
that's good.
in the photography. So no, we did not do that. We used real food.
So now you must have started your podcast somewhere right there, like 2008 or so, something like that, right?
2008, I think it was. And actually, yes, 2008. And I think it went through 2018. I can't. And
that sounds right.
Doing it. I will say, I love doing a podcast. It gave me an opportunity to write a little bit, but I think I mentioned this to you earlier too. I don't think until you've been on that side of it, you realize how demanding and how much work it is to do a podcast.
Yes.
It was a lot. And I had a dog at the time who, I would get everything set up and, I'd be recording. Of course, she'd start howling right in the middle of it or something, just like really. But, so I would record an episode like 6 or 7 times. But I loved doing it. I really did. Coming up with topics was easy for me. And I don't say that. I mean, because no, I'm nothing. I'm no one. But it just, I felt like that was such a gift. And I really enjoyed writing about those things and then sharing. And I really loved it. It was just, my family life got to be a little more demanding, and it was a lot of time and so sad. And, I guess I did it for several years. I mean, there were other things that came into ancient faith that, were great. And I get, hopefully it served its purpose. And, but one of the things that's always been really, really important to us is, for our family to sit down to dinner together. And of course my kids are grown now and out of the house, but when they were younger, that was a priority. That had been a priority in my house growing up with my parents, even though my father's schedule was a little more unpredictable. But that was always a priority. And it was for my husband and me too. I mean, and I always tried to make that clear through the podcast. It doesn't matter if you're sitting down with a multi-course meal or a sandwich. Doesn't matter. Be together. Have your family at your table. And I will say that was just one of the joys of really raising my children, was being around, just having that time together. And it, honestly, it's really how we got to know our son-in-law, our oldest daughter's husband. He was living alone here when he first moved to Birmingham, and he just got in the habit of coming for dinner. And so for several months, he came and had dinner with us every night. And I loved it.
That's great.
Yes. But, it's like I said, it doesn't, the food is secondary at that point. It's having your fellowship and your communal time with your family or your guests or whoever.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved about your podcast, is that it was about food. But it was interesting because it's a cooking podcast theoretically, but it's also saying things like, well, it doesn't matter what you're eating. Don't worry about the food. But I thought it was very nice because it was like a sort of spiritual, holistic understanding of how we incorporate these things into our lives and our families. And I think we don't get enough of that, right?
That's what I wanted it to be. I mean, I did not want it to be just me coming on there reading a recipe. That would not have been probably very exciting, but no, I was writing about what I was doing, and that's where I was in the trenches, so to speak. So that's what I was doing, but I'm glad that came across.
It did.
Thanks to my dog, but she made it a little bit.
It is terrible. I mean, people may underestimate how hard it is physically to record a podcast when you don't have like a podcast, station or studio or something to go to. You're just in your house. And I used to go in my closet because the kids, you couldn't hear them as much and the clothes kind of muffled things. And I would just stand in the closet and record podcasts and think, well, this is probably not what people are picturing, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
I would go in a room that had carpet in it because there was one, and I thought, I don't know anything about acoustics. I don't know, but I thought, well, maybe this will help. And then I would get all settled, or I would do it, and she would be outside, or then some days I would bring her in, and she'd be right next to me anyway, or But no, I love doing it. I would, I would be happy to find something like that again. But, I'm kind of like trying to figure out, I've got a couple of things in my mind and a couple of things I'm working on, but I would love to find something like that, again, to do more development. The good thing about Cooking Light was it exposed me to so many different elements of cooking. And with the food magazine, that was just a whole nother thing to learn about, a whole nother area. And I got to, I was trained to do everything. But my real draw, where I felt like I did well, was in development. And I think that comes from, I get lazy sometimes. I don't want to follow a recipe. I'll just, and I'm comfortable doing that, for better or worse, but I think that was part of my training that I really liked. We had, starting my second year, we did not do this as first year apprentices, but the second year we were divided. There were 15 people in my class. And so we were divided into teams, randomly, every so, you would get pulled out of your regular rotation. You knew it was coming, but the chefs would put together a team of, say, 4 or 5 of us, and it was called a mystery box. And so we would have to meet at 8:00 that morning, and we didn't know what we were going to get. And so the chefs would put the cart together the night before, and so we'd meet, and they would show us what we had, and we could use it, or we could say, no, we don't want to use it. And so we might get a fish, or, you just didn't know, or we might have no meat or no fish, and you had to do a vegetarian meal. You could work with whatever they gave you. And we had 30 minutes to write a 4-course, 5-course menu, I think, for 8 people. And so we had then roughly 3.5 hours to fix that. And then table service at noon, usually, for the food and beverage manager, the executive chef, a lot of times the sous chef, the woman who was the nutrition, she was a nutritionist, and she was head of the apprenticeship program. And so we had to serve all of that. And I just liked that. I just thought it was really fun, and look at what can you make out of this, And so I think that's why I got into development, and I enjoyed it so much. Was it was a challenge, and some things work better than others, but it was a challenge, and I really liked it. So that was.
There you go. Well, yeah. I mean, they have TV shows like that right now, right? Like people will be watching on Food Network or something, Cutthroat Kitchen, shows like that, where it is just the mystery box of ingredients. And it's interesting because you can't taste the food or smell it, but it's still interesting to watch and to think about what different things can you do with food and what different combinations can you come up with. So I can see how, if you really love cooking, how that would really become quite a fascination, because it really is interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it, and I really kind of got into that. A lot of Cooking Light was how can you take things that are classically done or traditionally, my grandmother's made this for 80 years or whatever, and how can you do that where you can make it a little healthier? That was the whole premise, and so I really enjoyed that challenge. So that's what I did. I did the column for that for a while. I wrote the recipes for that. But somebody asked me one time, I think it was Iron Chef. I can't remember the name of the show. Somebody asked me if I watched that, and I said, absolutely not.
Right.
It would make me so stressed out to watch. And everything that was so great about culinary school, there were some downsides. And I said, I don't want to watch a show where you have somebody yelling at you, or I've lived through that. I don't want to watch that. That is not entertainment to me. But there were some kitchens were a little easier to work in than others. And I said, I can't watch that show. No, so I'm really selective about what I like to watch as far as cooking shows.
Yeah. That's funny. That's right. Yeah, they actually do have, there's the whole genre, right? Where there's like a chef yelling at everybody, or like Gordon Ramsay or someone. It's people love that. And it's hard to imagine why that would be fun, but it's very popular.
It's not fun. I can't watch him at all. No. And I had chefs who were really demanding like that, and people who had quick tempers, and that's just, you can work in that environment, but it's not pleasant. Let me just say that. There were some times where I would think, okay, I just need to get through this. Okay. And my rotations would change roughly every 6 to 8 weeks. I'd move to a different kitchen, and, you learn. And I one of the things I come back to a lot is I had a chef who told me once, sometimes it's more important to learn how not to do something. It's sometimes the lesson you learn, and that always kind of stayed with me. And I think, okay, but no, I don't want somebody yelling at me.
Well, I don't know. Would you ever consider doing a cooking show? Martha, you could do a cooking show. There's a new Orthodox channel coming out, Logos Cinema. It's going to be like Netflix for Orthodoxy. So you could have a cooking show on it. Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be kind of crazy. You know who I do like? I like to watch Julia Child. I did watch her when I was growing up. My dad would occasionally, sit with me and watch that. That was very rare. But I remember watching her on public television from Nashville. I remember watching that.
She was fun to watch. I liked her.
Yeah, she's fun to watch, but she's not yelling at anybody.
Well, that's true. She's very sweet.
And her food looks great. It's wonderful. But
no cooking shows for you though, huh?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say no. I mean, nobody's approached me about anything like that, but maybe. Let me just. I'm working on a couple of different things in my head, but
Yeah. What are you thinking about doing? 'Cause, I mean, you're a Latin teacher. You've got all the cooking, but it's interesting because, as you said, with the cooking, it's like there's photography, there's food styling, there's it's a lot of different sort of parts of your personality and parts of your creativity that you're allowed to, or that you're able to exercise. What appeals to you most of all the different things you've been doing?
Probably writing. Probably at this point, probably writing either, I don't know, a blog or putting a cookbook together or something. I don't know.
This sounds promising. I like this.
I'm just kind of trying to find that out. I'm trying to figure out the next thing. I kind of took, I worked, as I said earlier, I worked on a project coming up on 2 years ago. I kind of took last year off. There were some family things that I had to help with, and so my children needed some things. So I'm kind of trying to figure out what can be the next step. I don't know, but
well, it's very exciting. Waiting to see what it's going to be. But let me know, because I want to know if there's a cooking book or something. I want to see it. I want to read it. But or a blog. Who knows? But
I'm not going to say never because I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out. But
there you go. So you mentioned your family, and so you have 4 kids. They're all grown now. Yes. Do you have grandkids?
3.
How many do you have?
3 are married. 3 are married, and I have 6 grandchildren. I have 4 grandsons and 2 granddaughters, and they're just I adore them. But I love I loved. Of course, I adored my children when they were growing up, but I love knowing them as adults. I really love seeing them as parents. And somebody was asking me about being a grandparent recently, and I said, well, it's wonderful because you kind of get to relive your children's life again, through your grandchildren. You get to kind of see your children again. And so I love that. I try to spend time with them, as much as I can, and to be helpful. And, but yeah, they're busy. It's a lot.
Well, you got enough stuff going on to keep you busy, I'm sure. So that's all right. But
so. Yeah, and
it's a beautiful thing.
I can't believe this is the end of your show.
That's the end of every day. Oh, there's something new. We'll figure something out. I'll be doing some other projects soon enough. Still writing and doing other podcasts as well. So probably just not live ones. Yeah. But it'll be good. But well, Martha, it is just so nice talking to you and so good getting to know you. I'm excited. When we were corresponding by email, all of a sudden I was like, wait, Martha Condra, I know who that is.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I'm just really thrilled to get to see you and to put a face together after and to officially meet you instead of just emailing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our audience for listening. And we'll see you next week for one last Everyday Orthodox. Good night.